Started with a look. Not a romantic one. Just one of those two long glances exchanged in the quiet spaces of a room where our spouses were also present. His name was Aaron, my best friend's husband, and I was married too. Happily, I thought. Or maybe I had just convinced myself we were. The first time I betrayed them wasn't in bed. It was in a message. A joke I wouldn't have sent if anyone else had been watching. But I sent it anyway. And he replied just as inappropriately. That's how it begins, doesn't it? Not with lust. With permission. With a part of yourself you offer that doesn't belong to them. Not really. Not anymore. We'd talk at night, when our spouses were asleep. He said he felt unseen. I said I felt unloved. And together we created a space where we felt wanted, even if that space was built on lies. The physical part started 2 weeks in. It was selfish and easy. Like tearing pages out of someone else's diary. I never planned to fall for him. But I didn't plan to stop either. For 3 months I lived in 2 versions of myself. One wore a wedding ring and made dinner like nothing was wrong. The other texted him good night under the covers with the phone on silent. I was two-faced. And both faces were broken. The worst part? She trusted me. My best friend. The one who stood next to me at my wedding. The one who cried with me when I had a miscarriage. The one whose kids called me auntie. I betrayed her too. Sometimes I'd look at her, sitting beside me, laughing over coffee and wonder, what kind of monster stabs the person who never held a knife? D-Day came 5 months ago. Not because I got caught, but because I chose to confess. To her. To him. To myself. I remember staring at the mirror that morning. No makeup. No pretense. Just me raw, guilty, terrified. And I heard something inside me whisper, "You are not this woman. But you became her. And now you have to undo what you've done." I messaged her first. "Can you talk?" She said yes. Cheerfully. As always. And that made it worse. We sat on her porch. The sun was too bright for what I had to say. My voice cracked by the second sentence. By the fourth she was shaking. By the sixth she got up and walked away. Didn't even slam the door. I handed her every screenshot. Every message. Every photo I had left. Not to hurt her, but because she deserved to know everything. And then I blocked Aaron. Forever. That night I told my husband, I wish I could forget his face. I wish I could erase the silence that followed. It was the kind that doesn't scream. Just hangs. Heavy.
Permanent.
He didn't speak. He just looked at me like I was a stranger. Like something he once cherished had died right in front of him. And maybe it had. I started counseling 4 days later. Because no apology was going to be enough. Because no sorry could carry the weight of what I'd done. Because I needed to understand why. Why I broke everything that was good. Why I ran from a love that was safe. Why I was capable of becoming the very thing I swore I'd never be. I started reading. Listening. Writing. Trying not to drown in my own shame. Trying not to run again. Trying to stay. I still don't know if he'll forgive me. But he stayed. 5 months later we're rebuilding something. Not shiny, not easy, but honest. And sometimes that's the only way to start over. With what's real. The morning after I confessed, the silence in our home was unbearable.
No shouting. No begging.
No doors slamming or glass shattering. Just my husband sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee he hadn't touched in over an hour. And me standing by the sink, unsure if I was allowed to move. To speak. To breathe. I had ripped his world apart with a single truth. And now, all I could do was watch him try to make sense of the wreckage. He didn't look at me. Not once. But I stayed there anyway because I deserved to feel the discomfort of what I'd done. Later that day he packed a bag. Not because he was leaving for good. But because he needed space. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't have to. Pain speaks without words. I didn't cry. Not when he left. Not when the door closed. The tears came hours later when I found the mug he always used. Still half full, still warm enough to remind me that love had lived here. Once. I slept on the couch that night. Not because he told me to, but because our bed felt sacred, and I didn't deserve the comfort of sacred things. In therapy I learned about shame. How it clings to your bones. How it whispers lies in your own voice. You're disgusting. You ruin everything. You don't deserve to be loved again. I listened to those voices for weeks, until my therapist said something that shook me. You can't punish yourself into becoming a better person. You have to choose growth. Every single day. So I started choosing. Tiny quiet choices. Waking up early. Turning off my phone. Sitting in the discomfort instead of numbing it. I made a list of every lie I had told. To him. To her. To myself. It filled 3 pages. I didn't tear them up or burn them. I folded them. Taped them to the back of my journal. So I'd never forget the cost of dishonesty. My husband returned 2 weeks later. Not with flowers. Not with a dramatic speech. Just with his keys in his hand and exhaustion in his eyes. He didn't hug me. He walked past me and into the living room like it was a stranger's house. But he was home. And that somehow felt like grace. We started talking. Slowly. Carefully. Like people crossing a frozen lake, afraid to crack the surface. Some days were unbearable. Some nights, he couldn't look at me without his hands trembling. Other nights, he would reach for me in the dark. Not for closeness but for proof. That I was still real. Still here. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't rush his healing. I just stayed. And did the work. I read everything I could about betrayal. About trauma. About how infidelity isn't just about sex. It's about identity. Because when you're cheated on, your reality breaks. And I had broken his. One night he looked at me and asked, "Why?" It was the question I had feared the most. Because there was no neat answer. No clean explanation that could justify what I'd done. But I answered anyway. I was lost. I was lonely. And I wanted something to distract me from what I didn't want to face in myself. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. His eyes filled with tears. And he whispered. But it hurt me. I nodded, sobbing quietly. I know. And I'll carry that forever. He didn't leave. He didn't say he forgave me. But he held my hand. And in that moment it was enough. We went to couples therapy. Sat side by side like 2 soldiers after battle. There were sessions where he cried and I sat in silence, letting his pain wash over me like penance. There were sessions where I spoke, not to defend myself, but to tell the truth I'd buried. We worked. Week after week. Word by word. I learned how to sit in guilt without letting it rot me from the inside. He learned how to express anger without destroying what was left. Together we started picking up the bricks. Not to rebuild what we had, but to create something new. Something honest. Something earned. And slowly, very slowly, he started seeing me again. Not as the woman who betrayed him, but as the woman who stayed. Who chose healing over hiding. Who chose him again and again, even after the worst of herself had been exposed. The mornings changed. Not in grand ways. We didn't wake up wrapped in each other's arms or whisper forgiveness into pillows. But we sat across from each other again. Coffee. Silence. Eye contact that didn't sting quite as much as it used to. Some days he didn't speak. Others he asked things I wasn't ready to answer. Did you love him?
No.
Then why did you keep going back? Because he gave me something I didn't know how to ask you for. That was the real answer. But I couldn't say it. Not yet. Instead I told him this. I didn't go back to him. I went back to who I was when I was with him, unexamined, distracted, numb. I wasn't chasing love. I was running from myself. He listened. And even if he didn't understand, he stayed. We built a new kind of rhythm. Shared playlists. Therapy notes on the fridge. Sticky notes with reminders like, remember to eat today. Today doesn't have to be perfect. Still choosing you. He started joining my therapy sessions once a month. First it was stiff. Clinical. Awkward. But then came the breakthrough. He said, I'm not afraid that she'll cheat again. I'm afraid I'll never feel safe again. That broke me open. Because he was right. I hadn't just cheated. I had taken away his ability to feel like home. Rebuilding trust is like rebuilding a house without the luxury of demolishing the old one first. We lived in the ruins. Brick by brick, we patched over the cracks. Together. I began to show him things. My journals. My triggers. My shame. Not because he asked, but because he deserved to know all of me now, not just the polished version. The one who weeps in parking lots. The one who can't always explain why she did what she did. And he didn't run. He stayed. Through the tears, the nightmares, the awkward silences over dinner. I stopped asking for normal. Normal was gone. But in its place we found something else. Real. We created rituals. Weekly walks without phones. Monthly letters to each other we weren't allowed to read aloud. Check-ins that asked, "How does your heart feel today?" Instead of, "How was your day?" They were small. But they were everything. I cried the first time he laughed at one of my jokes again. It wasn't forced. It wasn't hesitant. It was real. That sound, I hadn't realized how much I missed it until it returned. We stopped celebrating anniversaries tied to the past. Instead, we marked new dates. The day he moved back in. The first night he slept beside me again. The morning we watched the sunrise together without speaking a word. People think healing after infidelity is about forgiveness. But sometimes it's about witnessing. Sitting with the person you love and letting them bleed in front of you. Not rushing them to stop. Not shaming them for the mess. Just staying. One night, I sat beside him in bed, both of us under the same blanket, and said, "I don't expect you to forget. I wouldn't want you to. But I hope that someday when you look at me you don't see what I did. You see what I chose to become after." He didn't respond. He just reached for my hand. And that was enough. The woman I used to be? She was hiding in shadows, afraid to be known. This version. She looks him in the eyes when she says, "I love you." 'Cause now, she means it. A few weeks ago we drove past the coffee shop where I used to meet him. I hadn't planned it. It was on a different route, one we rarely took. And yet there it was, like a ghost I hadn't buried properly. I saw it before he did. The familiar sign. The corner table by the window. I stiffened. My husband noticed. He didn't ask. Didn't press. But later that night, while brushing his teeth, he said in a quiet voice, "You don't have to tell me what you remember today. But you can." So I told him. Not the whole ugly truth. Just the part that still itched under my skin. I hated who I was in that place. The way I smiled.
The elite.
I felt like I was trying on someone else's life, and hoping it didn't fall apart on me. He rinsed his mouth, wiped his face, and said, "You're not her anymore." Those 4 words wrapped around my chest like a soft blanket. You're not her anymore. And I believed him. Not fully. Not forever. But in that moment I let it in. We still had hard days. There were times he pulled away when I reached for him. Times when I caught him staring into space, eyes glassy with thoughts I couldn't touch. Healing doesn't erase memory. It just makes it easier to live with. I started journaling more seriously. Not just reflections but raw confessions. I missed the simplicity of being numb. I'm afraid of messing up again. I wonder if I even know what love is. It helped. To see the thoughts on paper. To stop letting them rot in silence. He read one of my entries accidentally. Left open on the kitchen table. I panicked. Not because it was a secret. But because vulnerability, even now, still scared me. But when I walked in, he was holding the page in both hands. Tears quietly trailing down his cheeks. He looked up and said, This is why I'm still here." I didn't understand. He pointed at the last line. "I'll never stop trying to become someone worthy of the love I already have." Sometimes we confuse guilt with growth. But guilt just keeps us stuck. Growth is when we start turning guilt into action. He started writing 2 letters. Little ones he'd fold and hide. In the fridge. In my coat pocket. Tucked into books I was reading. Some said, "Today was hard. But I'm proud of you." Others said, "I still hurt. But I still choose you." And the one that broke me wide open? Loving you now feels more honest than it ever did before. That's the thing about rebuilding. It's not about getting back what was lost. It's about making something entirely new out of what remains. And sometimes it's stronger than what existed before. I stopped checking his reactions every 5 minutes. Stopped holding my breath every time my phone buzzed. Worried he'd seen something that triggered him. Trust was coming back. Slowly. Not as a flood. But as a slow, steady drip. We talked about the future again. Not in grand gestures. But in gentle hopes. Maybe a trip. Maybe adopting a dog. Maybe just waking up next year, still us. And yet, sometimes I still dream of her face. My best friend. The one I betrayed too. In my dreams she's not yelling. Not crying. She's just looking at me. The way you look at a stranger who used to be someone. I've wanted to reach out. To say more than just, I'm sorry. But I haven't. Because some wounds need distance. And some forgiveness isn't mine to ask for. It's hers to give if she ever chooses to. I wrote her a letter anyway. Never sent it. But I poured every ounce of regret and respect into it. I told her how much her friendship meant. How deeply I failed her. How I hope wherever she is she knows I never stopped loving her. Even in the middle of destroying everything. I sealed it in an envelope and left it in my journal. Not for her. For me. Because some healing is about saying things out loud even if no one hears them. My husband asked once, "Do you wish it had never happened?" And I didn't know how to answer. 'Cause yes, I wish I hadn't caused him pain. But no, I don't wish away the growth, the depth, the honesty, the love that feels carved out of something real now. So I told him, I wish I could have learned all this without hurting you. But I'm grateful we didn't let that be the end of us. He nodded and whispered, "Me too." I didn't expect the loneliness to last this long. Not the kind that comes from being alone. The kind that comes from no longer recognizing yourself in the mirror. The woman who smiled through dinner parties. Who once sent flowers on birthdays. Who texted heart emojis and miss you messages to her best friend without a second thought. She was gone. And in her place stood someone raw. Quiet. Remade by consequence. I started walking every evening. Not far, just around the block. No headphones.
No distractions.
Just the sound of gravel underfoot and my own breath. It helped. The rhythm. The repetition. The reminder that I could keep moving. Even when I felt stuck. One evening I saw my husband watching me from the window. His face soft. I waved. He didn't wave back. But he was there. And that mattered. We began rebuilding intimacy, not physical but emotional. He asked questions again. What books I was reading. What dreams I'd had lately. What scent I was wearing. Little things. Small gestures that 6 months ago would have gone unnoticed. But now, they were everything. I started painting again. I'd given it up years ago, too busy, too tired, too uninspired. But now it felt like medicine. Colors spilled from my hands like truths I hadn't spoken. My husband walked in one night while I was mid-stroke. He didn't say a word. Just stood there. Watching. When I finally looked at him, he smiled and said, "It's good to see you doing something that isn't about fixing me." That line gutted me. 'Cause he was right. In my obsession with healing what I broke, I forgot that I was broken too. I cried that night. Hard. And for once, not just for him. For me. For the woman who forgot how to live outside of guilt. For the woman who stopped creating because she believed she no longer deserved beauty. The next day he brought me a new set of brushes. Left them by my easel with a note. "Paint for you. I'll still be here." That was the moment I realized. He was healing too. Not in huge waves. But in ripples. And I had to trust that. We began sharing journal entries. Not every day. But when it felt safe. Mine were still full of apologies. His were full of grief. But one night he wrote, "I'm not sure if I'll ever forget. But I want to remember you like this. Honest, scared, and still showing up." We were far from perfect. There were days I still hated myself. Nights he turned away from my touch. Moments where silence felt more honest than words. But the difference? We stayed in the room. Even when it was hard. Especially then. I started going to support groups for betrayed partners and unfaithful spouses. Yes, they exist. And no, they're not what you think. They're full of people clawing their way back to self-worth. People trying to turn shame into softness. I met a woman who said something I'll never forget. What we did was selfish. But what we do next decides if that's all we'll ever be. That line followed me home. I wrote it on our bathroom mirror. In dry erase marker. He saw it the next morning, paused, then added underneath. Then let's keep choosing better. Our life today isn't shiny. We don't post pictures of anniversary dinners or beach sunsets. We don't pretend we're the couple others should envy. But behind closed doors, we are real. We talk. We listen. We disagree without shutting down. We laugh again. We even dream again. He started leaving early notes before work. I made the coffee. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. I couldn't sleep last night, but I'm still here. And one that I keep folded in my wallet. Even on our worst day, I'd still rather rebuild with you than start over with someone else. I don't wear my guilt like armor anymore. I wear it like a scar. Visible.
Permanent.
But no longer bleeding. We still talk about her. My friend. The one I haven't heard from since that day. Sometimes I wonder how she's doing. If she's healing. If she hates me less. If she sleeps through the night without flashbacks. One night I asked him, "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" He sighed. "I don't know," he said. "But I hope you've started forgiving yourself." That question haunted me. Had I? Forgiveness isn't a finish line. It's a daily choice. To show up. To be better. To love knowing exactly how ugly love can get. And still, to love anyway. I stopped counting the days since the confession. At some point, the calendar became less important than the present. Healing isn't about reaching a date where everything is suddenly okay. It's about learning to breathe again when the air still smells like regret. The dreams changed too. First, they were violent. Shouting. Crying. Running through endless halls where I could never reach my husband in time. But now they were just sad. Empty rooms. Forgotten conversations. Her face blurry distant. Not hatred. Just loss. That's the part people don't talk about. The grief. Not just of a marriage nearly broken, but of friendships lost. Versions of yourself that can't be recovered. Moments you'll never be able to make right. I missed her. My best friend. She hadn't reached out and I didn't expect her to. But I missed her anyway. The way you miss someone who once held your secrets like treasures. Who knew your laugh without hearing it. Who stood beside you on your wedding day. Not knowing she'd be the one you'd betray most. I spoke about her in therapy. First just barely. Then more. I admitted that I still loved her. Not in the way that excuses anything but in the way grief forces honesty. I loved her. And I destroyed her peace. Both can be true. My therapist asked, "If she called you tomorrow, what would you say?" I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I would tell her I don't expect her to forgive me. But I hope she found her peace. And I hope she never feels the kind of pain I caused again, from anyone." I wrote that down in my journal. Felt like a prayer. A wish I could only offer in silence. Meanwhile, my husband and I started living more. Not just existing. We went to a farmer's market one weekend. Something we hadn't done in years. He bought fresh herbs. I picked out sunflowers. We didn't talk much. But we smiled at the same moment when a little boy dropped his ice cream and shouted, "New. That was my best flavor." We laughed. Together. And I caught him staring at me like he used to. That night, he kissed my forehead before bed and said, "Today felt easy." I knew what he meant. No pain. No past. Just us in the moment. We don't always get those days. Some are still full of triggers. Commercials. Songs. Random places we pass on drives. But those days don't define us anymore. The healing does. I remember once early on he told me, "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." And I told him, "Then let me become someone you can." Every single day. I still live by that. Even now. Even after months of effort. Because trust doesn't return with time. It returns with proof. So I keep showing up. When he's quiet. When he's tired. When he needs space. I don't beg anymore. I wait. And I listen. We've stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" Instead we ask, "How do we make sure we never become strangers again?" One afternoon he found an old photo of us. At a wedding. Before everything. We were dancing awkward, goofy, holding each other too tight. He held it for a long time, then said, "I don't want to go back to that version of us. I want to love who we are now. Wiser. Honest. Real." I kissed his hand. And for the first time in months I believed we were going to be okay. He told his family eventually. Not the details. Just that we had struggled. And survived. They didn't ask questions. But his sister hugged me a little tighter next time she saw me. Forgiveness didn't come like a sunrise. It came in tiny moments. when he asked me to make his favorite meal again, when he laughed at my old terrible jokes, when he reached for my hand in a crowd. Each one said, "We're still here." I no longer needed him to say he forgave me. His presence was enough. His effort was enough. And slowly I started to forgive myself too. Not all at once, but in pieces. Forgiveness isn't letting yourself off the hook. It's acknowledging the damage and still choosing to be someone better. There are scars, but there is also softness. And sometimes that's more powerful than perfection ever was. There was a night, maybe 3 weeks ago, where I found him crying in the bathroom. It wasn't loud.
No sobs.
No fists against walls. Just his shoulders shaking. His palms pressed to his eyes like he was trying to unsee something. I didn't ask what triggered it. I already knew. Sometimes healing isn't linear. Sometimes a single sentence from a movie, a smell from a stranger's cologne, or a thought you didn't mean to think, is enough to rip your chest wide open again. I knelt beside him quietly. Didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. Didn't say, "Please stop," because he needed to feel it. I just sat there. Until his breath returned. Until his hand found mine. Until the quiet no longer hurt as much. We talked hours later. On the couch, under a blanket that still smelled like winter. He said, "I thought I was over it, but it still hurts. And I don't want to hate you, but sometimes I still do." I looked at him. Not defensive. Just open. And whispered, "Then hate me. That's what you need. Just don't walk away." That's the truth about rebuilding a marriage after betrayal. It isn't about being perfect every day. It's about staying. Through the grief. Through the rage. Through the confusion of loving someone and wanting to scream at them in the same breath. We've come to know each other again. Not as husband and wife, but as two people who chose to start over. Not with a blank slate, but with every crack showing. Some nights we still sleep back to back. Some mornings we wake up tangled in each other. Both are okay, because both are real. I've stopped trying to rewrite the past. It happened. I betrayed him. I hurt her. I lost myself. And no apology will erase that. But I'm not trying to erase anymore. I'm trying to live with it. I remember when I used to flinch every time he touched me. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't feel worthy of his tenderness, his effort, his presence. But the first time I didn't flinch, he noticed. And he smiled. He still doesn't say, "I forgive you." And I've stopped waiting for it. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a finish line. It's a slow, quiet rebuilding of trust where once there was only ruin. I wrote another letter to her. My friend. Still didn't send it. But I lit a candle for her birthday. Prayed in my own way that wherever she is, she's finding her peace too. My husband asked if I'd ever want to speak to her again. I said yes. But not to beg. To listen. If she ever wanted to speak, I would give her space.
No justifications. No explanations.
Just my full presence. Because some wounds aren't meant to be healed with words. Just witnessed. We went away last weekend. Just 2 hours out of town. No plans.
No itinerary.
Just us. We ate at a roadside diner. Took a walk by the lake. Fell asleep holding hands in a too small bed with scratchy sheets. It wasn't glamorous, but it was everything. Because we didn't talk about the past. We just lived. He took a picture of me there. I didn't know until later. I found it on his phone. Unfiltered, candid. Just me looking at the water, hair blowing in the wind. He had captioned it, "She's still here." I wept. Not because of guilt, but because of grace. Because somewhere along the way, he stopped looking at me like a mistake and started seeing me as his choice again. Healing taught me this. You can love someone and still break them. But if you're lucky and if they're strong enough, they might let you stay long enough to put the pieces back together. One breath at a time. We are not who we were. We'll never be. But maybe that's the point. Because what we have now, it's not built on perfection. It's built on truth. Even when it hurts. The therapist once told me that rebuilding trust is like teaching someone to walk on a broken leg. Even when it heals, they'll always limp a little. That stuck with me. Because I could feel the limp in us. We weren't limping from lack of love. We were limping from the memory of pain. He doesn't ask for details anymore. He doesn't want to know what I felt when I kissed someone else. He's never asked what I wore, or how I looked at him, or whether I ever thought of him, my husband, while I was lying to him. Somehow that makes it worse. The restraint, the silence, the quiet strength of a man who could tear me apart but chooses instead to hold his breath and build a life from ashes. I wish people could see what healing really looks like. Not the Instagram version with holding hands and we made it captions, but the midnight tears, the distant eyes over dinner, the I love you's that come out more like questions than statements, the trust falls that have no net. I remember a day when he said, I need you to be honest even when it's hard, especially then. So I started telling him things like, I thought about texting him this week. I didn't, but I thought about it. I still dream about her. About the look in her eyes the last time we spoke. I don't want you to touch me tonight. Not because of you. Because of me. Brutal truths. Ugly, sharp things. But real. And every time I shared one, I feared he would pull away. Instead, he leaned in. Maybe not with words, but with presence. And that's something I'm learning to trust more than forgiveness. We began new traditions. Every Sunday we write one thing we're proud of. Not about work. Not about money. About us. I didn't shut down when I got triggered. I said what I needed without blaming you. I chose us instead of the easy escape. Little wins. But strung together, they became a kind of healing necklace, looped softly around our marriage. I went to visit my mother last week. She asked carefully, How are things with him? I said, We're still standing. And she smiled, because even she knows, sometimes standing is more than enough. He tells jokes again. Not forced. Not for my sake. Just because he wants to. Sometimes they're terrible. But I laugh. Because laughter feels holy now. Like a language we're both relearning. We tried therapy together again. We talked about the future. Not like before, not a fantasy. But a possibility. Maybe a move. Maybe starting fresh somewhere new. Maybe staying exactly where we are. Just learning to love the space again. He asked once, Do you think we'll ever be completely past this? I took a long breath before answering.
No.
I don't think the past goes away. I think it softens. And he nodded. He understood. We both did. There are days I still grieve what we lost. Innocence. Spontaneity. Ease. But what we've gained. That's something few people will ever understand. The kind of love that's been through war and chose to rebuild with bare hands and scarred hearts. I was folding laundry when I found one of his old t-shirts, the kind he used to wear when we first started dating. It smelled like detergent and memory. I sat on the bed and held it like a keepsake. And cried. Because I remembered the girl who used to fall asleep beside him without guilt. And the woman I am now, who has to earn every moment of peace. He walked in, saw the shirt in my lap and didn't say a word. He just sat beside me. And after a while he whispered. I still see her. The old you. She's not gone. She just grew up. I don't know what the next chapter looks like. But I know it won't be built on silence. Not anymore. We've started saying thank you more than, I'm sorry. Thank you for staying. Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for not giving up on you, even when I didn't know how to hold space for us. It's not about earning back what I lost. It's about becoming someone who would never lose it again. Sometimes when the house is quiet, I catch myself whispering I'm sorry into empty rooms. Not because anyone is listening, but because some regrets echo louder in silence. We had dinner with his parents last week. The first time since everything came out. They didn't know the details, only that we had been through a rough patch and were working on it. His mother hugged me a little longer than usual. His father looked me in the eye and said, Good marriages aren't the ones without storms. They're the ones where the couple learns to dance in the rain. I nearly cried into my soup, because forgiveness sometimes comes from places you least expect. Later that night, I asked him if he ever thinks about starting over with someone new. He paused, then said, I think about starting over with you. Every day. That's enough. I had started a new painting recently, something abstract, dark blue and rust red. Half finished. Just like us. But this time I didn't stop because I was scared. I stopped because I wanted to see how it felt to pause without running. Growth is weird like that. Doesn't always look like doing more. Sometimes it's just doing different. We made a list of what we want to rebuild. Weekly walks. More music in the house. Sunday breakfast, no phones. One compliment a day, no repeats. A promise to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Sounds simple. But when trust has been broken, even simple feels like climbing Everest. Still we climb. He wrote me a letter again. I found it in my coat pocket. You are not the worst thing you've done. You are the woman who stood up in her shame and chose to become better. And I see her. Every day. I folded that letter and kept it in my wallet. Next to my ID. Because that's who I am now. Identified not by perfection but by progress. I stopped checking his phone. Not because I was afraid of what I might find, but because I finally believed that he had nothing to hide, and that I had finally become someone who didn't need proof to feel safe. Sometimes we still talk about her. My friend. The one I betrayed. He doesn't speak with anger. Neither do I. We speak like people who know we can't rewrite the past. Only make peace with it. I tried writing her again. Not a letter this time. Just a note. 4 lines. I hope you're okay. I think of you often. I'm still sorry. You deserved better from me. I didn't send it, but I read it aloud to the wind. Sometimes that has to be enough. We talk more now. Not just about pain. About joy too. We talk about how we met. The first road trip. The first fight. The way he used to sneak chocolate into my bag before work. We remember. Not to long for what we lost, but to honor how far we've come. The truth is, I don't hate myself anymore. I did. For a long time. But hate is a cage. And if I stayed there, I could never love him the way he deserved. So I broke the lock.
I chose softness over shame.
Accountability over self-destruction. I chose to stay. He told me recently, I love you more now than I did before. Not because you cheated, but because you came back. Fully. And didn't run. And I cried. Not because of guilt. Because of grace. Grace is when someone sees your mess and still believes in your masterpiece. I don't need people to understand why I did what I did. There's no clean reason.
No romantic excuse.
Just emptiness I tried to fill in the worst possible way. But if there's redemption, it's in the way I've chosen to live since. I wake up every day beside him with gratitude. Not the kind you post about. The kind that's quiet. Soft. Earned. I make coffee first now. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Love is service when it's sincere. There's a lot we lost. But there's a version of us raw, real, rebuilt. That we're just now getting to know. And I think, I like who we're becoming. Strange, the things you carry with you after betrayal. The weight of a glance. The silence between breaths. The echo of someone you used to be. Hovering behind every mirror. I carried it all for months. And then one morning I looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. My reflection stared back. Still flawed. Still healing. But not hiding anymore. That day I made a promise. Not to my husband. Not to the friend I'd betrayed. But to myself. To never again betray the version of me who fought this hard to become whole. We don't talk about timelines anymore. There's no when will we be fully healed. Because healing is not a date on the calendar. It's a choice we make over and over again. Some days we fall short. We get triggered. We argue. We pull away. But we always return. Always. And that, I've learned, is the truest measure of love. He once said, I miss the old us, but I respect the new us even more. That stayed with me. Because what we've built now, it's not shiny. Not perfect. Not picture frame worthy. It's real. It's ours. I asked him once what made him stay. He looked at me and said, because even in your worst moment, you chose truth. And I saw how much it broke you. That mattered. Truth. That's what saved us. Not love. Not time. Not therapy, though all those helped. But truth. The unfiltered, ugly, breathtaking truth. And it's what will carry us forward. Even on days we doubt. Even when memories sting. Even when trust trembles. We created something new. Not a sequel. A rebirth. The first time he reached for my hand again in public, I thought my heart would burst. It wasn't a grand gesture. Just fingers sliding between mine at the grocery store. But it meant the world. Because it said, I'm not hiding our story. I'm walking through it with you. And I no longer look for forgiveness. I live it. In the meals I cook with care. In the nights I sit with his silence without pushing. In the mornings I choose patience over panic. We're not who we were. But we're still us. And that's more than I ever thought I'd deserve. Sometimes when he sleeps, I trace the lines of his hand. Not to possess him, but to remind myself that love is earned. Over and over and over again. I have learned more about myself in the last 10 months than in the last 10 years. About shame. About mercy. About what it means to truly show up for someone after you failed them. And I've learned about him. The quiet strength of a man who didn't yell. Who didn't shame. Who didn't punish me daily to prove his pain. But who instead rebuilt. Stone by stone. With me. We still get asked how we did it. How we made it through infidelity, through shattered trust, through betrayal between best friends. The answer? We didn't do it all at once. We did it in tiny, impossible moments, when giving up would have been easier. But we chose love instead. Not blind love. Not naive love. But fierce, forged in fire love. He still smiles at me like he did when we first met. It's different now. Softer. Wiser. Less about fantasy. More about presence. We're planning a trip. Nothing big. Just a cabin. In the woods. No service. Just us. We're calling it our reset. A space where the past doesn't follow, and the future isn't yet written. Just now. Just this. He said he wants to renew our vows someday. I told him I'm scared. He said, "You already renewed them. Every single day you stayed. I don't need a white dress. I just need this version of us. The one that fought. The one that cried. The one that healed. If you've made it this far, here's what I'll tell you. You are not your worst mistake. You are not the affair. Not the betrayal. Not the broken pieces. You are what you do with it. And if you choose love, choose real, hard, trembling, courageous love, you might just find something stronger than what you lost. We did.